A desperate search for missing people continues in the Libyan city of Derna today. Bodies are still washing up on beaches or decaying under the rubble, a week after Storm Daniel triggered devastating floods in the country's east. The United Nations said in a report on Sunday that the death toll in Derna alone has risen to 11,300, but there are an estimated 10,000 more listed as missing. Arise News chief correspondent John Cookson has this story.
This was once a main street in the formerly vibrant city of Derna. Barely recognizable now, its buildings destroyed, covered in mud and other debris, thousands of residents swept to their deaths. It's a disaster of epic proportions caused by a once-in-a-lifetime storm that triggered the collapse of two poorly maintained dams. Relatives cling to the hope the missing will be found, but the chances of discovering anyone alive now are slim. This Derna resident says, "We lived in Derna, we grew up here, we were raised here, but we've come to hate this place. We've come to hate what it has become. There's nothing left to keep us here," he says. The search for bodies goes on today along Derna's rocky coastline, but identifying the dead will be a long and painstaking process. Help has arrived from overseas. These are Russian search and rescue teams. The dogs are trained to search for the living. And French civil guards are helping to set up field hospitals. The big worry now is the threat of a disease like a cholera outbreak caused by polluted water supplies. This Libyan Colonel Mohammed Abdul Wahid says, "It's the first time we've had to deal with such a catastrophe on this scale, and it's a real tragedy," he says. International aid and rescue missions are slowly trickling into Derna, but they hardly match the scale of the devastation. John Cookson, Arise News.
Well, John Cookson joins us live now from London for more. Welcome to the show, John. It's good to have you. Can you tell us what the latest is that you're hearing from Derna today?
Hi, ladies. Great to be on Newsday as always. Well, the search for bodies continues. The UN saying 11,300 people have died so far. The mayor of Derna hinting that another 10,000 are dead, making it over 20,000 dead in this tragedy, one of the worst disasters of the 21st century, which happened over the weekend in Libya. Bodies still being washed up on the beaches, and indeed as far away as Malta. They've taken some days for the bodies to cross the Mediterranean there. So it's a question of finding the bodies, identifying them, which is very difficult when they've been in the sea for a week, to be quite frank, and whether all of them will be identified is far from certain. The search goes on to try to find people buried under the rubble, but as I said in my report, not much chance of anyone being found alive at this stage, so long after the tsunami of mud and water that swept through the city. The city was protected by these two dams, ironically. The dams were built in the 1950s because a river has always run through Derna. The dams in the river stopped the flow of water through the city, but when they collapsed under the great weight of water from Storm Daniel, then that's the tragedy unfolded after that, with water crashing down the mountainside and through the city and eventually into the sea. Just an awful, awful tragedy.
Awful indeed, John. Now, we understand that some aid is getting through, but not on the scale that it's needed. Why is that?
The main reason is, and we'd have to look back into a little bit of Libyan history here. Colonel Gaddafi, of course, ruled the whole country with an iron fist until 2011, when he was overthrown by rebels supported by countries like the UK, France and America. That led to a division in the country, and a renegade Colonel Khalifa Haftar took over the east of the country and, in fact, seized Derna in 2014. So we have two governments operating in Libya, one backed by the international community in Tripoli, the other in Benghazi with Khalifa Haftar at the helm, supported by countries like Egypt. So the country was already divided. Now, this disaster happened in the east, where law and order had virtually broken down anyway. So now supplies have to get in through the Egyptian border. The Haftar family control everything. The colonel and his sons still have an iron grip on everything that passes through. So we have this massive logjam of aid trying to get through, but when it gets to close to Derna, then it suddenly comes into the ambit of these guys who are actually running the country, and things just slow down and in fact stop more or less.
Looking at the grim task of identifying flood victims, it's been a while since this particular flooding happened. What chances are there of anyone being found alive now, John?
Very slim. As I said earlier, this torrent of water, this tsunami of water swept through the city, and frankly, swept people out to sea. They're not going to be found, or many of them are not going to be identified. In other disasters, like the Moroccan earthquake that I covered a week or so ago, people were brought out from under the rubble. But in this case, the rubble was, and the people were swept out to sea. So there was no shelter, no hiding place for people who wanted to try to escape the flood of water. They were simply swept away. So for that reason, basically, very few people, if any, are going to be found alive now.
Well, John, in terms of a potential silver lining, will this disaster have any impact on reuniting a divided country?
That's a good question. I hear from contacts in Libya that, the whole nation is shocked by what happened, whether you're in the West or the East or whichever government you feel loyal to. And some aid has been getting through from the government in Tripoli. However, so far apart are the two governments that I think once the initial shock of this has been overcome, and in the weeks and months, Libya is going to be just as divided as ever, particularly because Colonel Haftar has such a grip and benefits from oil in the east. His family are benefiting. Why would he want to give all that up? So I'd like to say that this tragedy would unite the country long term, but the reality is probably not.
All right, then. Thank you so much, John, for your time and, of course, your analysis of this story.